Good morning, everybody. It's day 24 of our 30 Days to Better Writing Habits. We're entering our final week now, can you believe it? So what I want to speak to you about in these last few days is I wanted to talk about some of the craft ideas that we need to be thinking about as we're writing now. Now, if we're 3 weeks into our 30 days, I'm assuming we all have quite a few words under our belts and that our stories should be really starting to fire. So I'm up to, I think it's about 24,000 words, 23. I'm sort of closely sticking to my 1,000 words a day, but sometimes I'm better than other days. We talked about how our subconscious keeps our stories going, and I found on the couple of days that I wasn't writing that I was still having lots of fun with my characters and they were having conversations with me. But it was a really good way to get to know my characters. Now, if we're 30,000 words into our stories, then we should be really starting to think about what motivates our characters, what obstacles that are facing them. But first of all, we need to maybe stop and do some planning and some writing around our character arcs. So what was the biggest problem at the start of our character's story? What were her problems? How are we going to solve them? And then all the things that we're going to throw in her way as we make her suffer before we give her happily ever after ending, or him, if it's a him. I forget that's a him as well. So what we need to do is we need to put on paper. We need to say, right, this is the first obstacle, second obstacle, third obstacle. Each time we are upping the ante and making it harder and harder for our characters to overcome the obstacles that we're putting in front of them. And that's the trick to making a story readable. And the further the reader goes into our stories, the more they want to know how this character's going to get out of it this time. And if your reader doesn't care enough, then she'll put the book down, or then he'll put the book down, and then we've got a problem. So we really need to start thinking about how we're going to make our character suffer. And the what if game is really, really a good game to play here. What if we do this to our character? And then if we do that, what if we try this? You can always up the ante. You can always make them suffer more. You can always make them have to go through bigger and bigger hoops to get where they want to go. And then we've got our finale and our climax, where it's the ultimate challenge, where it's almost impossible for them to get out of this one. That way we know we're there, and then we sort of tidy things up. So if you've been writing every day, and if you're 30,000 words into your story, you may only be a third of the way in, or you may be halfway in. But it's important at this stage of our stories that we know what we're doing, and it's important that we stop and we think and we plan and we ponder. This is not where we let those critical voices in. This is where we start to nut out what our story's about. And it takes time. And sometimes you can't rush the process, and you need to really, really think. But to continue to write now without some of this pre-writing work, you'll find that you may be writing for nothing, and that you may have to get rid of it and go back to the beginning and start again. And that's the last thing we want. We've had a lot of successes so far in the first 3 weeks. We don't want to lose that momentum now. We want to keep writing, and we want to write with confidence. And that's why I suggest that we really start to think about structure. We really start to think about some of these craft ideas. And character is probably one of the things that drives our story forward the most. Sometimes there's plot-driven stories, but really it's those characters that we care about, and we want them to win against the odds. So we've got to make sure that those odds are high enough, that we care enough that our characters do survive. So if you need to, go back, draw a little chart, see if you're on track. If you haven't given any thought to these things yet and you're just writing blindly, hoping that your story will come good, you'll probably find that when we get to our second drafts that you have a lot of rewriting to do, and that you may dump large chunks of your story, and that's not what we want to happen either. So pen and paper, character arc, don't just think character and da-di-da-di-da, this is the plot, this is what's going to happen. We have to make sure that we have that... we have to make sure that it's going up. I could use a fancy name for it, but I'm not going to, because Sam will laugh at me and go crook on me for doing it. So, but really, it's a rising axis, and we want our characters to be working their way and working really, really hard. And if you want to know the name for it, I'll put it in the blog post, and then I won't get into trouble. All right, talk again tomorrow. We might look at point of view, I think, because point of view, If you are writing in the first person, then there's some tricks that you need to know. And if you're swapping character points of view, there's also some tricks that we need to talk about. These craft ideas are pretty important to be thinking about at this stage, and I hope you've surrounded yourself with your writing books and that you're reading lots of blogs and websites about craft. These things sort of happen hand in hand and in tandem as we're writing. It's not something that we do afterwards. It's not something that we do before. Now that we're living the writing life, we surround ourselves with the tools of the trade, and that's really, really important. So I'll see you tomorrow. Make those characters suffer, and we'll talk again then. Bye for now.